I'd like to call to order the committee of the whole meeting on Monday, September 21st, 2020. We call the roll, please.
Trustee Carroll.
Here.
Trustee Curtis.
Here.
Trustee Gaffino.
Here.
Trustee Gately.
Here.
Trustee Lowry.
Here.
Trustee Martinez. And Mayor Berman.
Here. Audience comments, but we'll hold those until we're talking about the individual opportunity. Trustee comments? Discussion, item number 1, Mike, our district text amendment for Red's Garage.
Yeah, thanks again, Mayor. Staff is soliciting feedback from the village board right now on petition 20-05, which is the I-1 district text amendment. You can recall the Red's Garage was issued a temporary occupancy or use permit by the village board, approved August 17th. The business owner had several options regards to zoning, as their use is repair, motor vehicle service and repair. They could have gone for the special use, rezone the property, or went for the text amendment to make the use a permitted use, which would allow them to operate by right. The business owner has made petition for a text amendment to make motor vehicle service and repair as a permitted use in the I-1 district, where it's currently a special use. The public hearing was held before the Plan Commission on September 1st. The Plan Commission minutes are actually attached to the other petition tonight, the second petition on the Cal meeting. So there's some context to the discussion that was involved. The Plan Commission recommended unanimously of the text amendment to make it a permitted use in the I-1 district, citing that the use itself was quasi-commercial industrial, that the there are zoning standards that whether the use is a permitted or special use, they are to adhere to a set of pre-qualified zoning standards in Chapter 11 of the zoning ordinance, and that there are limited areas of town. There are mainly 4 areas of town where the I-1 district exists: the wetlands on Randall Road, the dark container property, the fire district training facility over on Butterfield Road, and this property in conjunction with the 111 River Road property, which is the former Belsom property. So just looking to achieve feedback from the village board on the text amendment to allow motor vehicle service and repairs a permitted use in the I-1 district.
So I think my concern, which I know we touched on at the last meeting, was preventing issues like this happening again, where somebody takes a non-permitted use and just starts using it without permission. I mean, have we done anything to address that so we don't find ourselves in this situation again?
We don't issue fines or anything like that. We haven't in this case. What we did was we went back to the business license, the business registration form, which is required that every business that operates in town actually obtain one. What we did was we made it very, very clear on the application itself is that any new business, we gave them all of my contact information, my phone number, my email address. So that way, before they even submit for the business registration, they're to confirm the zoning with me. That's the way to avoid this best we can. It's even if you have a full occupancy system, like I've worked in other villages, but it's never perfect. This is going to happen. But in this case, we're doing the best we can to sort of circumvent that on the business registration forms.
I mean, to me, this is not a good place to be in as a village, having to go back in hindsight and make exceptions for businesses that have been operating against our ordinances. So I just think we need to be proactive and not find ourselves in this position again. It just seems like this has just happened, way too many times. And we need to find a way to not keep finding ourselves in this position.
Any other comments? All right, moving on. Was there anyone here to speak about the?
I believe the business operator was on.
Pardon?
I believe the business operator for the first petition was on, but I don't know if they want to speak at this point.
I will move on to the second item. A petition, Forest Ridge Townhome Developments. Now, for those that are here to speak about that, David, do you have how they signed in or who gets to speak first?
Mr. Berman, we did not have a sign-up sheet. What we'd ask people to do is to either send the meeting host, which is me in this case, a message indicating they wish to speak, or they can use their raise their hand feature in the chat if they wish to speak, and then I will send them a message in the chat to let them know when it's their turn to speak. But at this point, I don't see anybody asking to speak.
So what we're opening it up now for audience comments on item 2, the Forest Ridge Townhome Development.
Yeah, Dale, typically we don't always provide the Plan Commission draft minutes. Again, we have draft minutes that have not been approved by the Plan Commission. At this point, we felt it'd be best, given the current environment and everything with Zoom, that we're not having in-person meetings, that we at least get the minutes done from the Plan Commission meeting. That way we have context from the discussion itself. So you'll see in your packet tonight, you do have the draft meeting minutes from the September 1st Plan Commission meeting, which do have a number of residents that attended the meeting, did speak and ask questions of the development. So those comments and questions, concerns are all listed in there. So if you'd like, I can go ahead and start with the petition.
All right, let's do that. I think the trustees had an opportunity to read the minutes, draft minutes from the Planning Commission meeting. To me, they seem to be very accurate. So it was because I said it on that meeting. All right, let's hear about the petition.
Yeah, so if you recall, this may look familiar. This was actually brought to the Committee of the Whole back in April 15th of 2019 for a concept review by the Village Board. There were comments back at that time. We've since been working with the developer on the property itself. It's the 8 acres of unincorporated land, which sits south of Oak Street, just to the west of Windstone Place subdivision, and would include a continuation of Forest Ridge Drive down to the south, connecting to Hearthstone Drive. Again, being the property is unincorporated, it would have to come back for further consideration, discussion with the Village Board as it pertains to annexation agreement and annexation of the property itself. Right now, they're showing 5 residential buildings or townhome buildings consisting of 6 units each, mostly 3 and 4 bedroom. And there is a duplex shown off of Hearthstone Drive. Dave, if you don't mind, if you could pull up one of the site plans for the development, please. Thank you.
First one here.
Yeah. So the Plan Commission discussed it at great lengths too, with a lot of great audience attendance that night as it pertains to the development itself. The Plan Commission did recommend approval of the development. They did add 2 additional conditions to the actual report, staff having 4 conditions. The Plan Commission added a 5th, being that construction traffic would be limited to Forest Ridge Drive, and then only restricted emergency access at Hearthstone. That way there's no construction traffic utilizing the Windstone Place subdivision to the east there. And also there's a cell tower that exists on the proposed lot 7, which would be the southwest corner of the development, which you can see that circle there. One of the conditions that came out of the staff or the Plan Commission recommendation was that the ground equipment be screened with a solid fence. So there were 2 conditions that came out of the actual Plan Commission meeting, and we're looking for feedback on the development tonight. As I had said earlier, there's going to be multiple meetings with this development because, again, we have to go through the annexation agreement process and the actual annexation process itself, which I believe requires a public hearing at a later board meeting. So right now, what I want to do is basically just focus on the development of the property itself, taking any comments you might have on the site plan, the building elevations, and so on and so forth. Because what was brought to the Plan Commission for consideration and ultimate motion was the establishment of the R3 zoning. Again, we have townhomes and a duplex, which are all permitted uses in the R3 zoning. We feel it would be applicable to that zoning district. So we did get a positive motion from the Plan Commission to support that zoning district. The property is required to be a PUD given the townhome development, the size of the property. that requiring a special use. The Plan Commission did recommend that with those two conditions that were adhered with the staff recommendations. The two deviations associated with that was that there was some landscaping. I believe it was every 500 square feet of unbuildable land basically was required to have landscape trees. And then also too that the use standard in the zoning ordinance requires that garages for townhomes be either side or rear loading. As you can tell by the site plan that the garage doors are oriented towards Forest Ridge Drive, each having a private access and driveway. This being the ideal situation too, so you don't have any sort of motor courts or having any sort of drive aisles or parking lots behind the units, which would then be impacting the residential development to the east. So those were supported deviations from the actual, zoning ordinance itself. Also too, the site plan approval, which would require obviously the review of the site plan and the building elevations, which we did submit in the packet for review. And also to the subdivision. All these four motions received unanimous, or not unanimous, but approval from the Plan Commission itself. One thing specifically I did want to address, in talking with the Plan Commission and receiving comments from the public, one item that always came up was parking. And what we'd actually done was taken a look, and the petitioner had actually prepared a parking, which you see on the left here. Each unit is going to have a 2-car garage and have a 16-foot dedicated wide driveway for actually a minimum of 2 cars. So there would be a minimum of 4 off-space parking spaces provided with each unit, where the zoning ordinance only requires 2. So they do meet the parking standard for the zoning ordinance, which is 2 per unit, and they have doubled that with at least 4 for each unit. We also took a look at the on-street parking capabilities that's on Forest Ridge Drive. What we had to do is kind of take the zoning requirements for 0-degree parking parking stall lengths, which is 21 feet. We had to integrate that into the length of the proposed Forest Ridge Drive. We had to add in spacing for fire hydrants, and we came up with an estimated 101 parking spaces on street. So if you include the on-street parking with the off-street parking, which is provided in each unit, you have basically average of about 7 parking spaces per unit, where the zoning ordinance requires 2. So we want to make sure we address that as well. That is specific to a lot of the questions and concerns that came up. I know the developer is on tonight. I also saw the engineer of the project and also the architect. So at this point in time, I'd like to hand it over to them if they have anything they want to present to the board tonight.
Very good.
Hi, nice to see everybody again. Nice to meet you, Mr. Berman. Yeah, we had basically just tried to look a little bit further into the parking. When we were speaking with Mike, based on the comments of the last meeting, we felt we had again followed the guidelines of what was on the comprehensive plan as best we could, and tried to follow directions to really give the village exactly what they were looking for on that plan. The exact ratios, I believe, were used the algorithm was pretty standard for what we had there. So we did feel we had enough parking, but I believe that between Matt, the architect, and Ray, the civil engineer, they actually did draw some further details on that. So I will let them answer any questions or go into anything further as far as the parking, because it was really them who did a lot of the details on that to make sure that it fit into the plan.
Yeah, I think the exhibit speaks for itself. It's pretty clear. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
I was quite concerned about parking. I think that what has been presented since last meeting has been very, very beneficial. There seems to be adequate parking. Whether that turns out to be true or not, beyond my my crystal ball, but there does seem to be adequate parking. The other thing, talking about the substance of the buildings and everything, we're talking about something that's 19,000 to 23,000 square feet. That's a pretty significant piece of property. So, and it's going to have a pretty significant the purchase price or God knows, a rental price if somebody wants to rent them out, so. I
I
was
think
concerned
they-
about parking, but I've been satisfied myself.
Mr. Berman, we do have a audience comment from Valerie Shoger.
All right, Valerie,
Hi, Mr. Berman and Village Board. Thank you for taking my question. A concern that I'm at 1473 Hearthstone Lane in the Windstone subdivision. And one of our concerns is certainly parking. From a realistic standpoint, these units do not have basements. And many times homeowners will use their garage for storage and end up parking their cars out on the driveways. If these are townhomes for families, and say you have 2 teenagers who also have cars, then that's 4 vehicles. So 2 cars would be parking on the street. Even if they do use their garage for vehicles, I know I'm not going to give up my parking space in the garage to my teenagers. If I have to leave first, you know, I'm going to park in the garage. So parking is a concern that we had. You know, this is like a gateway into our community coming from Orchard. And there don't seem to be very many trees that will be planted on the west side of this property. So that's one of our concerns. I would also like to thank the planning committee for limiting the construction traffic so that it will not be going through Windstone. We really appreciate that.
that makes sense. Other comments? Anybody else? David?
Mr. Berman, I do not see anyone at this time.
Well, I think they've been on, they've been listening, and hopefully they're satisfied with the comments that have been made. Of course, we all had an opportunity to read the comments that were made before, so I think that
Hey,
if
Mr.
it has any effect on our, you know, on our feelings, that's fine.
Mr. Berman, yeah, there's an additional person that wishes to speak.
Okay,
Ed, feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself when you're ready.
Hi, this is Cheryl Stetter. Thank you for speaking with me. I also spoke at the Planning Commission. I have a couple more things that I wanted to bring up. The first, I'm wondering about if we know exactly how far you are able to build next to the designated wetlands. So I know that behind my house, I'm also in the Windstone subdivision, is the protected wetland. And I'm wondering if who did that designation? Was that on the builder's end? Did you guys go ahead and do that, or was that already designated?
NCAP performed the wetland study on this before any of this planning was done.
Okay.
And yes, the wetlands were delineated in the field, and they're incorporated into the preliminary engineering plan, the limits of them. And then there's typically a buffer associated with that, but they also allow for buffer averaging and for depending on what type of encroachments you have into the buffer. But there's no pavement proposed or anything like that in the buffer. So we feel that this is a pretty typical around the wetlands there. And we're
Okay,
not
thank you.
the wetlands at all. Everything that we're proposing is downstream of the wetlands. So.
Okay, so thank you. It was, it's one of the things that we brought up at the last meeting was the drainage. That's like a huge concern because we all get a lot of water in our backyards, and we know that our pond fills up with water. So we're concerned about the additional building and what effect that will have on the drainage. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the builder keeps mentioning that this land was marked as townhomes a long time ago. Like somehow the village proposed these be townhomes. I wonder if that was in consideration with what would happen with the cornfield. So like to me, I stand here and I see trees and I see pretty land, and then I see an empty cornfield. And I think, go ahead and build on the cornfield. Don't build and cut down all the trees. And so I'm wondering, what is the plan? What's going to happen with the cornfield someday? Will that change your opinion about this one strip of land?
Mike, you might talk about our comprehensive plan on its own.
Yeah, Dave, I don't know if you have still have the slide from the comprehensive plan. Essentially, kind of working off the 8 acres strip of land for the comprehensive plan, which was recently updated in 2015 with Housley Levine. That portion of the property was recommended for attached single-family homes, which are townhomes, and then transitioning. And again, the townhomes, its purpose of being more of a transitionary land use, going from single-family homes from the east to the west. This piece being a transitionary piece of townhomes, then moving towards medium to high density residential and commercial as you move to the west at Woodman's. You know, as far as property inquiries go, I've been working with, I've had some interest in some apartment units in the past several years there. It's been mostly people feeling around for apartment units, but also to industrial warehousing. So what the comprehensive plan does, it allows us to maintain that future land use dignity with moving forward with what the village anticipates. And it's not set in stone, but in this case, we do have the actual long-range vision of the village to include the townhomes, which also included the continuation of Forest Ridge Drive and Hurstone Lane.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
The future, we don't know. Our crystal ball doesn't show that, but we're saying that it could be multifamily. It could be commercial. The way it's been the last couple of years, we don't look at commercial being anything retail. I don't think we're going to put a warehouse there. So we'll see what the long-range plan is. And the property owner has never come up with a plan in any way for the sale or development of the property. So we're pretty much in the dark as to what she might be thinking in the future.
It just seems like to me a lot of houses to put on that little strip, and I can envision a really beautiful complex if you have a little bit more space there that included some of the cornfield. So I know that the builder obviously wants to like make money off of this, but I just look at this little tiny piece of land and I see trees, and I don't see that many trees around me in North Aurora. And I know that when this gets built, it is going to level all of that landscape. And there's not that many trees in this area. So that would be one of the things that I would really like to just speak for here and just to take into consideration, that obviously I think it's a beautiful place to back up to. You know, there's beautiful trees to back up to. And if there's more land, and eventually, we don't know obviously the future of the cornfield at all, but if there's more room in that cornfield to work with and to create kind of a nicer community that would look better for us. It scares me that it's going to be a wall, a blank wall, and everyone driving down Oak Street towards Woodman is going to see a blank wall of a house. Not pretty little houses or not even smaller, low profile townhomes. I'm afraid that people are going to see a wall, and that's going to be like our view from our pond that is just absolutely breathtaking, especially in the fall this time of year. You can see our pond right here in the middle. Our pond is breathtaking. So we are now going to have a wall that we look at. So that is what I would just really like the board to take into consideration. There's not tons of huge trees back there. There's huge trees in the front too, huge tall trees that take years and years to grow. So that's I have to speak for the trees a little bit. That's my, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for listening.
Well, thank you for your comments.
Yeah, Dale, too, if I could just address that for a second. Thank you, Cheryl, for that. The condition number 3 of the staff recommendation for the development was to do a tree survey. Is basically taking any tree that is of good quality over 6 inches when measured 12 inches above grade. And we're going to work with the developer to maintain as many trees as we possibly can that aren't interfered with the development of the property, meaning the building, or within 15 feet of the building envelope. So that's something we wanted to get ahead of, and we'll be trying to preserve as many trees as we can on the property.
Thank you. You might want, and thank you. And there would be something else to consider is also the additional planting of trees. I think Valerie mentioned that too, like along that west end, because that could also help too. Thank you so much.
Mr. Berman, we have another audience comment from Sonia. Sonia, go ahead and speak when you're ready.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Berman and the board. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I am at 87 Windstone Drive, also in the Windstone community. And very similar to what Cheryl was saying, if you could pull up the image that you showed earlier, which was the Forest Ridge parking image, that will really help with what I'm about to say. Yes, that one. Thank you. As Cheryl mentioned, the view from the pond, once I saw this in the packet, I was really concerned because you have the houses there, the townhouses that are going to block that view partially. And that's kind of one of the best views in our neighborhood. So I don't know if there's any way, we've already talked, the community has said that we have a concern with the number of units. Is there anywhere to completely remove that last unit and not block the view of the pond, or do something because that's just completely obstructing our amazing view?
I'll speak on that. I believe that when we talked about this in the last meeting we had, we were actually on the lower end of the density proposals for most subdivisions. And I think we had already taken out a few of the areas, if I remember correctly, if I check with Ray, to adjust for the wetlands. I think we had already taken a couple out. So, we tried to work actually on the lower side, not on the higher side for density. I might be incorrect about that, but Mike, I think we did discuss that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the density goes, I included in the board packet tonight the APA normal densities. What this falls in the very low end of, and again, I can't speak to the views. I'm sure it is a very nice area, but as far as the zoning is concerned, it meets the standards for the townhome development, requiring 20 feet between each unit. And again, we don't have the density requirement in the zoning ordinance. We're basically going off of bulk regulations, which includes building heights, setbacks, and things like that, which this meets. Dave, if you could mind, there was the one site plan that showed it was the one I had sent you recently. It included the floor plans on the actual building envelopes, which is the, let's see. Well, you'll see it in your packet, the staggering the units. So we wanted to indicate that originally when we came, it showed there was a building envelope in the original engineering plan, which was forwarded to the Plan Commission. It showed a 50-foot setback, but in this case, the building envelope sits actually further from these buildings. So the units are actually going to be set back pretty far from which would be their eastern property line. So they're going to be shifted to the west best they can. So they're going to straddle the front setback line and provide as much separation in the rear of the property. So they're further away from the eastern property line and the development to the east. I think it's that one, Dave.
Which one?
The preliminary engineering plan to the left. Yeah, you can see the original. If you zoom in, if you don't mind, please. the original building line that came in, which was the 50-foot line, where you can see the units have been pushed back. So now they're actually a little further away from the property line to the east. When the Plan Commission came in, they showed 50 feet to that building envelope. It's showing to the actual building now, if you see that 80-foot measurement. So the building itself is going to be actually 80 feet from the eastern property line, not just the building envelope, which was 50, which is that dashed line there that says building envelope typical.
All right, does anybody else would like to speak?
Yes, Mr. Berman. Valerie, go ahead and speak again.
Oh, Valerie.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak again. There were a couple other points that I wanted to bring up just to kind of put things in perspective. I'm sure everyone, all of the trustees are aware of the size of the Windstone Place subdivision. We have a total of 67 single-family homes in our subdivision. What the developer is proposing for this narrow strip of property is 32 units. I think, in my opinion, there are too many units. If you each have families living in these units, that's a lot of people, it's a lot of cars. The units do look like walls. They're supposed to be luxury townhomes, and the product that we were shown really don't look luxury. They don't match with our neighborhood. The reason why people live in Windstone is because of the way our subdivision looks. It is more of a higher end neighborhood. The new development that's being proposed doesn't have walking paths. We're going to get the people that are living next to us, which I welcome new neighbors next to us, but they're going to be coming over into our subdivision because they have no place to walk. I would also like the trustees to take a look at the street. It's just a straight street. And what the builder is, or the developer is proposing that these townhomes look like are very cookie cutter. There's nothing luxurious about the outside of these units and the way that they look. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think we've run the gauntlet on
Yeah, I don't see anyone else, Mr. Berman.
pardon?
I do not see anyone else, Mayor Berman.
Very good. Then I would say that we've heard enough. Is there any other comments from the trustees?
I think that I would like to comment. There's a couple of points that Valerie Sugar made that kind of rang true, because that was my first impression too, with the straight street. And the I think I mentioned it when they first presented this to the board, that the architectural style isn't real attractive compared to the rest of that community there. So I just like to go on record as saying that. I don't know if you can cut out a unit or two to help that out, or what, or maybe curb the street, but I do have a little bit of a concern about it as well in terms of the aesthetics of the whole project.
I would agree with Mike and with some of the comments. I would like to see some, some brick and some different types of stuff on the finished product to dress these up a little bit. And also, I think the one resident pointed out that the one unit, I think it's unit number 2, is going to be right in front of their pond. Maybe you could take 2 units off of that and to kind of preserve that view and make that a 4 unit instead of a 6 unit. I don't know what that does to the builder's costs and percentages, but it's something to think about. The other thing is, when we approved the Lincoln Valley on the Fox, they came in there and they told us they were going to preserve as many trees as possible. And then they went in and they butchered beautiful old oak trees. And I think that was very disheartening for anybody that drove by the old Fox Valley golf course. So I would like to see something with a little bit more teeth, that we preserve these trees as much as possible along, because there aren't that many sections of trees in North Aurora. And I think we need to do a better job of protecting these, you know, big 50-year-old oak trees that have been around a lot longer than I have.
I don't think there's any of those there, Mark.
Well, I would like to see us take as many steps as we can to actually protect those trees, whatever's there.
Sounds good. Any other comments?
Yeah, I got a comment. I appreciate the residents that live by there, you know, bringing us all up, because, you know, it's their home. North Aurora is our home, you know, and just hearing the comments, you know, and it just seems to me, my seamer says this doesn't really fit good here. You know, it's a straight shot. Definitely no creativity. And I remember me being one of the first ones to say, straight road, the houses shouldn't, the front of them shouldn't be all straight. And yeah, they stagger by a couple of feet. But I remember I mentioned same thing, flagstone, make it look nicer, because it is what you see coming from west going east. And it just, to me, it doesn't fit there. You know, and like I said, I side with the people there. You know, it's like, you know, it's little things, but their view, this, that, you certainly can't always buy a view, because you don't really control the property, you know, adjacent. But there's a lot of things that seem wrong with this. So I'm not really a fan of it the way it sits today. Drainage is always a question. We always hear about parking. You know, look at Summerwind over there. You know, parking is horrendous, you know, and it's a straight street here. And, you know, we certainly want to be business and builder friendly, but it's got to really work for North Aurora. And this little stretch here, you know, there was nice houses yet, or nice trees, you know, the dirt house was there for years and years and years. And it just seems like a tough piece, but, you know, maybe it needs to wait until the adjacent piece goes. I mean, we're not really in a hurry to force something through. I don't see really a lot upside to this. You know, I went, you know, projects come and go, but, you know, something that we can be proud of going, you know, that looks really good. Or are we just, you know, filling a space? You know, and tonight I feel like we're just filling a space, you know, this doesn't seem good to me. So that's kind of where I'm sitting.
Yeah, this is Matt Haylock. I'm the architect. I'd like to say a couple of things. Trustees, thank you for having me again. Would you be able to bring up the front elevation of the building?
Yep, just give me 1 second here.
Okay. I apologize, for some reason it's not rendering very well on here. Something goofy with our PDFs apparently.
I converted them into a PowerPoint, so that's why they're not as crisp.
That's all right. So the first thing that we do when we look at a new subdivision is we like to look at the neighboring communities, just as you do. And we've taken a look around a couple of the neighboring developments that have been spoken about already. And we kind of use those as a starting point. Just one thing you'll notice on our rendering is that they're more cool colors. So it may, you know, more dark black, dark gray, light gray, and so forth, rather than the traditional earth tones. And that was really the development team's preference on this one, to go with something a little bit more modern colored. But the details themselves are all very traditional and classical, and there's a lot of rich ornamentation in the building that you really can't see very well here. If you look closely, you'll see at the base of the building is stone. That's the first 3.5 feet or so is stone. Working our way up, it's all a cement board siding. We have a variety of horizontal lap siding. We've got shingle siding on most of the gables. We're also planning to introduce some vertical board and batten siding to give it that a little bit more of a craftsman style than it already looks. We also have standing seam metal roofing on some of the garages, and the trim work on the elevations, it's 3.5 and 5.5 inch trim with little pieces of crown molding on top of them. So it's really in my opinion, it's a nicely detailed facade. It may not come across very well on this elevation, but it is. We feel it's even a little bit of an upgrade from some of the other developments in the area. As far as creating some more interest on the facade, you already mentioned that there's 2-foot offsets between the typical units. The end units, the 4-story units, or the 4-bedroom units on the ends, those are offset by 8 feet. So the building really is anything but flat. We can create a little bit more jogging in there if you wanted to, but we want to maintain the views for the residents looking out the windows as well. Also, there was some comments at the last meeting, at the Plan Commission meeting, and we agree with them. What we're going to do is, if you look from unit to unit, there's a lot of continuity, and that's already been brought up tonight. A lot of similar types, sizes of gables and so forth. We're going to add some additional height variation, add some bigger gables, create a little bit more interest vertically as you go across. So some of these gables all look the same one after another. We're going, as far as the shape goes, we're going to add some more variation across the facade, create some more interest so that it, at first blush, it doesn't look repetitive. So that's one thing we are going to do. So we're very happy with the color scheme, the detailing, and I think we're going to improve it even more, and we can present that at one of the later meetings if there is one. But those are my comments.
Could I just make a quick comment on the road layout? I realize that for most subdivisions, having a winding road is nice, and it keeps traffic down, and it looks better architecturally. But you also need, in any village layout, you need collector roads. So if you look at the map, you can see that this is really a continuation of Forest Ridge north of Oak. And it also has to connect to Hearthstone on the south side. So if we were to wind this, what the other obvious constraint is the size and shape of the property, and then the wetlands up in the north side. So we couldn't wind the street at the south end because you can't get too close. You need enough room to make the adjustment to Hearthstone. And then at the north end, it has to line up with Forage Ridge. That's otherwise, traffic problems if those two don't line up. And then with the wetlands right by that detention basin, there's really just not a good way there's just not another good layout for this road. And it functions well as a collector road for Windstone to the east and for the future development, whatever that is, to the west. So yes, it's not as architecturally pleasing as winding roads, but it's functional and it serves the purpose of this site. And for townhome development, it matches the function. So if there's any other comment, that I'd be willing to speak to that.
Any other comments? Any other questions? Any other? All right, well, we've heard the discussion. I think if any conclusions to be made, I guess we all have our our way of making, we're certainly not gonna vote. And I think the comments can be used in our decision making. So with that, we'll move to the next item, which is, if I can find my notes. Oh, the village clerk discussion. Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 3 on the committee of the whole agenda tonight is a discussion about the village clerk position with the village. As everybody knows, the village clerk, Lori Murray, has resigned as she moved out of state. Though I am not clearly a good replacement for Lori. I tried during the roll call, but I'm not as good as her for sure. Basically, what happened was when she resigned, we had an opening where the next election for village clerk is in the spring of the upcoming year, so spring of 2021. The mayor was looking at options and processes and how to, what those options would be to fill the position and whatnot. And in doing so, he asked about the duties of the clerk and noted that many of the duties are actually being done already by staff internally. With that, he thought it was a good idea to approach the village board with a conversation about the future of the position and whether it should be an elected position or if the duties should remain within the staff. That being said, Kevin Drundle, our attorney, did draft up a memo for discussion in which it talks about that process. Should the village board want to pursue removing the elected village clerk position, it requires a referendum. And Kevin is prepared to discuss that process or the position in general.
Kevin with us?
Yep, I'm here. I mean, I did the memo, which I think covers the bases pretty well, but you might have some questions.
Well, I have comments.
Or comments.
You know, I guess 50 years ago when I got involved in the village clerk was pretty important because, you know, we didn't have a staff of like we have now with all the professionals. And the village clerk was really important to us as trustees because she was the one that we tried to get to do all the things that needed to be done that we didn't have time to do. She probably didn't have more time than we did, but it was delegated to her. Plus the what she was statute said she'd do. And we had good clerks over the years, did a great job. But we went through a period of time where we didn't have the someone that did the job to meet our satisfaction. And of course, the election process, you're never guaranteed the best. You know, sometimes you get people who just want to continue on. But anyway, so my thinking is that because our village employees, as assistant clerk is doing all the activities that the clerk would normally do, certainly going to the county and everything else. And certainly can take minutes and present those to us for our approval. But it really is a waste of time to have someone run for office who doesn't make any decisions, is not involved at all in the decision-making process or the discussion process. And all she does, or all they do, is a function that at one point in time was important to have someone do, but now we've got staff that can do it very easily. So my feeling is that we'd be much better off to, and we'd be much smarter to have someone that we can appoint to the position or appoint to do the work, who we know is qualified, rather than base it on a political election that we never know how that person is going to perform. So that's my feeling. That's one of the reasons, because I had someone in mind for a clerk's job, and I thought, boy, this would be great. But then the more I thought about it is that, you know, we're paying, what is it, $400 or $500 a month for a clerk to go to 2 meetings a month. and do the, and do the minutes. That seems like it was, plus, you know, an awful lot, plus the fact they had to go through the election process. So, my comments, my feelings.
Kevin, isn't the function of the clerk to certify our election results for our board?
That's part of the function. You know, the clerk is supposed to be the keeper of the records and the taker of the minutes and the, you know, signing off on documents and as you mentioned, Mark, kind of the point person for election.
Yeah, but we have election committee made up of trustees and plus the clerk.
Yeah, and actually the staff actually traditionally handles those because the clerk isn't in the village office. So when people come in with election papers, it's not the clerk who's meeting them and taking the papers, it's a staff person. So usually it's the administrative assistant who kind of, you know, figures out that stuff and it's, you know, we don't really pay a clerk enough, you know, to be at the village on a regular basis to that extent. And which has also actually been an issue in the past where we haven't had anyone run for clerk. We've been really fortunate to have one person who was dedicated for many years to do that work, but it's really there's actually a lot of responsibility for very little pay.
The reason I'm asking the question is because my concern would be that somebody that is embodies the power of, or in the event that there's a dispute in an election or something, it's the clerk's job to certify the election result.
No, it's a committee. It's an election committee. It's not just the clerk.
The clerk does make up that committee of people that would hear election objections, whoever that is, you know, whether it's an elected clerk or an appointed clerk, they would be on that committee.
But wouldn't we have a conflict of interest if it's somebody that's appointed by the board that's making determination, they're subject to the board and they're making determinations about the board election? That's the whole purpose of having them elected, is that they're independent and they're not beholden to the board.
Yeah, but other board members serve on that same committee.
Right, but the clerk serves as an independent voice.
Well,
from a kind of a legal standpoint, I can see your point in terms of conflict of interest, but it wouldn't really, I mean, it wouldn't technically be a conflict because the statute allows a change in government to, you know, to allow for an appointed clerk. But, you know, from a kind of a non-technical standpoint, you have a point.
you know, we did away with the treasurer's position because, you know, that again was someone who was appointed and did a specific job, but the same thing that he is doing, and it could be done so much more efficiently and so much more effectively by our finance director.
So what you're saying is, if you eliminated it, you would appoint somebody? Is that it, or would it be our deputy clerk that would just fill in and do that role? I'm sorry, what?
It'd be up to the board to appoint someone, but in my feeling, it would be our it would be an employee that we would appoint.
Yeah, my only concern, as Trustee Carroll said too, is, you know, eliminating a elected person always bothers me, because I think that's the right of the people to vote people in, and yeah, it does make sense to some degree on saving some money, but I have some concerns about that. So I don't know, eliminating an elected person is maybe the way to go.
Well, you were here when we had someone who was elected that didn't do a good job, right?
I would like to ask, what's the difference between the appointees on the, you know, our planning commission and some of the other commissions? I mean, those are non-elected positions either that bear just as much weight on their outcomes. You know, I tend to think that the clerk, I mean, I'm fine with somebody being appointed with the consent of the board.
Yeah. I think we'd be more guaranteed a good person to do the job than what we are with an elected kind of thing.
Well, there's not much we can do without a referendum anyway.
Oh, no, it's gotta be a referendum.
So
It's actually a
I like
change.
Kevin's suggestion that why don't we wait and see if anybody runs, and even if they do, you could always put it on the ballot still, right, Kevin?
Well, yeah, we can put it on the ballot
Up
in
tonight was
the
to
spring.
discuss it so that,
Right.
yeah, you know, we're not saying they shouldn't run, and we're not going to come up with you know, but sometime between now and the date selected that we have to, then we would make a decision to have a referendum on the next election.
If we don't have anyone who runs for clerk, the mayor has the authority to appoint. And actually, unlike the trustee positions where the appointment would be for 2 years until the next election, for some reason with the clerk, it would just be an appointment for the next 4 years, unless there's a referendum that would change that.
Yeah. Okay,
All right, thank you.
enough discussion. Entertain, let's see, we're going to adjourn to executive session. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn to executive session.
Second.
Second.
Do we have a motion and a second?
We have.
Yeah, Mark Carroll made the motion.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we're in executive session. We're gonna drop out all those people that are listening and willing to talk and go on.